My name is Michael Hourigan. I'm a racehorse trainer and I live in Patricksville, County Limerick. I was born in the back of a pub in Rathkeil. My father was a cattle dealer and I wouldn't go to school, I suppose. That was my main object. I wanted to be a jockey. And my father owned the pub, and as I said, he was a cattle dealer as well. I wasn't a very good rider. I started my apprenticeship with Charlie Weld in 62 to 67. The best years of my life. I rode my first winner for Charlie at 63 or maybe 64. But I only rode 14 winners in my career. But I rode a winner for Paddy Mullins, the Farewell Nursery in Leopardstown. I'd say 1965 it was, to be the last flat race of the year for a fella called Hall Dare. He was a big owner of Paddy's. And 7 stone 6 I carried. I wasn't the bravest in the world now, you know, even though I rode 3 or 4 winners over hurdles and then winner over fences. But I'd love to be able to do it. I used to be half jealous of my children when they were riding. They were so good at it. But then again, they were taught properly, you know. Mike was the youngest champion amateur in England. 17 years of age he was, yeah. There was only one other fellow the same age as him, Steve Devonport. He was 17 as well when he was a champion amateur. But Michael was 17 as well. And Paul was champion young rider, conditional. And Laura rode about 34 or 5 winners. So they were better than I was in. So I started with one stable at the back of the pub. I had my pony in it, and then I built a second stable, which we had 2 race horses. And we finished up with 22 stables at the back of the pub. You couldn't swing a cat in the yard. But we got going there, and I trained 5 winners from the back of the pub, and the following year I trained 12 winners. So then I rented Clonunion Stud over there. And I was very lucky there. My 3rd year I trained 25 winners. So the thing started to move a little bit for me then. But it took me 6 years to train a winner first. Farmers had horses at that time, they bred them. And if they didn't sell them at the sales, they would put them in training. So really that's how I got going. I was getting horses belonging to local people around Rathkeil and the area. And it seemed to get me going. And you work hard at it, and it was great. We had a working pony, and I used to be riding the working pony. That's what I had now. And I suppose my mother came from Michael Morton was a good short jump rider, and my mother would have been his aunt. So maybe that's where the draw for the horses came. But I think not wanting to go to school was the biggest problem. And we were in Clonunion for 5 years, and then this farm here came up for sale in 1985. Myself and my wife Anne, we bought it, 110,000 at the time. And I bought it from the local man in the village, Pat Collins. He was a publican, and he had this farm here. And funny enough, I'd say I was often here as a child with my father, because he used to sell cattle to the guy that used to own the place, a fella called Jimmy Casey, and he used to sell cattle to him. And I never remember being here, but obviously I was here. Well, I suppose the first day I trained the winner was the first success. A horse called Ramraj, I'll never forget him. Jackie Cullen rode him. And Jack Cullen was first jockey to Tom Costello at the time. But he rode my first winner inside Limerick, St. Patrick's Day in 1979. And he rode several winners for me afterwards, Jack did. But I suppose that's when the day started. You know, I mean, I had a trainer's license for 6 years prior to that, never trained a winner. I had no gallop, I had nothing. and all I was doing was ducking and diving in and out of farms and jumping in off the road into a field trying to train racehorses. I mean, it doesn't work. And your biggest problem, like if the horse broke his leg in the field, how were you going to get him out of it? Because you had to jump back out again, like, you know. So, like, I mean, it was a big story, but sure, it is true. And there was a man in the town on Rathkeil, and he had a couple of big fields, north, south, east and west of the town. Dan Johnson was his name. But he said to me one day, he met me in the street, and he called me and he said, I want to speak to you. God says, I'm going to get it now. But I made my way to meet him anyhow. And he said to me, tell me, he says, is it you or me, he said, has a trainer's license in this town? I said, I have it. Well, he said, why don't you train your horse on your own land? He said, you know, I have no land. So, I mean, we got on well after that. But it was just, I mean, he did say that to me, you know. I suppose I was bluffing my way trying to be a racehorse trainer. And I had a few horses. I had a horse belonged to Robert Hawkins, and I had a horse belonged to a fellow called Johnny Nolan, he was a local man. And Tommy Boris was a man from Boris and Ossory. I don't know how I come to get Tommy Boris, but he had a very good mare with me called Honeycomb Back. And Johnny Nolan had a good horse, he called him Creeves Cross, that was his first horse. And Creeves Cross was just below Rathkeil. I suppose Doran's Pride was the first horse really, like, but I had several good horses before that, but you sell them. Like I bought Very Promising as a 2-year-old myself, and I sold him on to PJ Farrell, and I kept a half share in him. And he was a very good horse, like, I mean, he won first time out, and he was having a quiet run, and he actually won the day he ran, and so, like, I mean, he was a very good horse from day one. And he beat a horse called Young Lover in Mallow on a bumper. And the both of them were sold to England, and they met in England, I think, about 6 or 7 times, and every time Very Promising beat him. So, I mean, he was a very good horse. Mercy Rymble bought him off me. But those good horses were wonderful horses to train. Like, I mean, Tropical Lake was a great filly as well, like, you know. And, like, in the early days, we had Stray Shot. Well, so we had Kilbritton Castle. I mean, we had so many good horses. So many good horses. And Kilbritton Castle was trained at the back of the pub in Rathkeil. You know that, I mean, he was a serious horse. I mean, he was an Ascot specialist. He was, Bill Spitch was riding. But he was just a great horse as well, like, you know. A girl that came to work for me from England, she was with us for 40 or 50 years, I suppose. Ross, she rode him a winner. She rode him a winner in Clonmel of a bumper, his second bumper, I'd say. Or maybe she rode him 2 winners, I'm not sure. But you see, they were all very, very good horses. And you forget about them all down the line. You know, we were too busy trying to pay for this place, trying to buy it first, and then trying to pay for it. 29 people working for us at one stage, and we took the horses, 100 horses, 100 odd, yeah. You know, I mean, I own some of them myself. I would always go to the sales and buy out. Even Aidan FITZGERALD, who you mentioned there a while ago, like, he said, when you go to the sales, he said, you come home with lorry loads of them. You know, and we had to break them all and ride them all. But I try and sell them then, you see. My father was a cattle dealer. He bought cattle today and he sold them tomorrow. And I suppose breeding would break out in a turnip, and that's what probably was in my head. You know, I don't know what was in my head. I didn't put it in there, but I'd say just because he was a cattle dealer, I was nearly a horse dealer. You know, not a horse trainer. I'd say I was a horse dealer. Everybody came here, the same as they came to Tom Costello's. They came here and they would come in the month of August, or you might get a phone call in the middle of January or February if they had a horse that got hurt and they were trying to keep the client. You might get a phone call from Philip Hobbs or Paul Nichols, anybody down that area. And I had another very good friend I sold him. I never sold him a horse that didn't win, Bob Buckler. Every horse he ever bought off me won races. But you just sold these horses because that's what you wanted to do. And I don't know why I wanted to do it, but I suppose it was breeding in me, you know. It wasn't to be, I never set out to be a racehorse trainer, but I did the best of what I had, with what I had, and got him sold. I won 3 races with his dam, Marion's Bride, and she got hurt, so I ran a horse in Fair Hill in 1986, and she was going to be covered. So I said that I met Willie Flood on the flight going to America, and he was going out there as well to the races. So I said I had to jump Marion's Pride and covered her with orchestra, and that's how she came about. Well, I got to know Tom Doran through Tony Mullins, and Tony Mullins was training for him. And I said to Tony one day at the races, I said, I have a horse there. I said, Tom should buy. I said, we'll set it up, and you know, but I got talking to Tom, and you know, and all I wanted was Tom's money. I didn't want the horse to train at all. But Tony will tell you this himself. He said, when I sold him the horse, I told him he'd win the day he'd run. But I don't think he thought I was telling him the truth, because I was only trying to make a sale. But he said, can't you keep him and run him in the point to point and see how he gets on? Which he bolted in the point to point, and then he won a bumper after that in Ballinrobe, and then he won his maiden hurl in Listowel. So Tom Doran left him with me, and he didn't give him to Tony, and Tony will tell you that story himself like that. I mean, it just the way it happened. He passed the wedding horse in front 35 times altogether. He won 29 races on the racecourse proper, and he won the charity race. He won a point to point as a young horse, and he won 4 more point to points then. So, you know, I mean, he was an iron horse, like, I mean, he never knew when he was beat, really. Sure, I suppose the day he won the Stairs Hurl in Cheltenham, I will never forget it. The top of my head went numb and went freezed when I saw him coming down the hill. You know, you know he was going to win, like, you know. But we thought he was going to win the year before as well, and Denali beat him. He fell at the last. But himself and Denali were upside, so we wouldn't know until we got to the winning post. Well, I was at the Derby sale, or the Land Rover sales in Goffs, and he came up out of the tunnel. He wasn't sold, and I just spotted him walking by, and I suppose a bit like a woman, you turn your head and have a look a second time. So I had a look at him a second time, and I followed him down to the stable. And sure, I suppose really it's history after that. 5,600 is what he cost, you know. But you can still buy those horses, like, but horses are just making ridiculous money at the moment. Like, I mean, they'd want to win the Derby, they'd want to win the Gold Cup, and they'd want to win the English National to pay for themselves, you know. But I sold beef for Salmon 4 times before I got paid for him. 4 times I sold him. I sold him for 10,000 one day in the month of August. I sold him 10,000. I sold him to a girl, and she bought him, and she was selling shares in him. And of course, when she went home, she was selling shares in him. She told the fella that what he was buying, and he looked it up on the computer, and he found out he cost 5,600 in June, and I was selling him in August for 10,000 and never got paid. I sold him to another fella then for 12,000. Oh no, that girl bought him for 12,000. I jumped the gun. I sold him, I traded him in. I had a mare on to a fella, man on Clare, and Killaloe, and he had a mare that was no good. And I told him I'd sell the beef for Salmon 10 grand and take the mare. The mare, I'd send it to the factory, I suppose. But he had a partner apparently involved with him. And he told the partner, so the partner put his head in here. I said, see, Hourigan must think something of her. He said, we'll take her away and we'll give her to somebody else. And he gave her to somebody else anyhow. So after a year with somebody else, they decided that Mike Hourigan was right. He had the plan. So I sold him to a girl for 12,000 and she never paid me. I sold him to another friend for 15,000 and he never paid me. But I was below the yard one day in the month of January. Seamus McCloy, who owned the Tell the Nipper and High Cloy, and Joe Craig and Dan McLennan were with him. And they said, these boys don't want to leave you unless they buy a horse off you. Well, says I, if they want to buy a horse, I said, buy the horse behind my back. I said, I've him named, and he's called B for Salmon. I said, and he'll run Sunday week, and he should win. They walked into the stable and looked at him. Never took the sheet off him. And said, how much is he? Well, says I have to get two prices for him now. I said, 35,000. I said, 5,000 if he wins a bumper, or wins a pint, and another 5,000, I said, if he wins a bumper. And I got the lot. And they never pulled him out of the stable, only said they'll take him. That's all they said, and sent me the money. And sent me the money when he won his pint and he won his bumper. And I was never sorry for selling him. I was delighted, the same as Doran's Pride. I sold Doran's Pride. I was never sorry for selling the horse. I was often sorry for not selling one. He jumped the last and he was about to win. And would you believe the horse that beat him, the one that winning the race, was owned and trained by my great friend Robert Hawkins, who used to own Ramanaja. So it's a huge circle, isn't it? Yeah. He went on the Clonmel with Davies and he won by a fence. And Philip Finton rode him a couple of bumpers. My daughter Laura rode him a winner in Galway, and Paul Hourigan rode him a winner. And first day I ran him over fences was in Clonmel, the Clonmel Isle, and Pat Keane was doing paperwork at the time. And I said, I'm going to do something stupid you'll think I'm gone off my head. What's that? Oh, I said, see, you'll find out. You'll find out, I said. You'll find out. I was going into his first run over fences. He was so good. I went to the Clonmel Isle and sure he bolted in. You know, he was just a very good horse. We went to Leopardstown on Christmas, we went up to collect the Hennessy. That's all we did. It was just a foregone conclusion. You went at Christmas, and you went in January, and you went in February again, and you just went up to collect it. Because he was that good, like, you know. Like if I could put the clock back, Beaver Salmon shouldn't have ran in the Gold Cup the year he ran in it. The first year, he should have ran in the Supreme Novice. But sure, he had all the Gold Cup horses bet. And he didn't beat him today over there that day. He was on the ground. So he might have escaped and won the Sun Alliance if I ran him. But I didn't. And I was never sorry for, I was often sorry for doing something, but I was never sorry for not doing it. But I was sorry for running him. So that's how you know, I mean, that's how you talk to yourself, you talk sense into yourself. I had Andy MAGUIRE here as an amateur jockey, and I had Timmy Murphy as an amateur jockey, and I used in the Bulger as an amateur jockey, you know. And you'd always use the best, but when you're used to having the best, when you're used to having the likes of AIDAN MAGUIRE and Timmy Murphy, it is very hard to walk into a tent nowadays and you don't know who you're going to get. And you'd ask a young fella like, and you ask him, did you ride a winner? And he'd say, I've had 6 rides, like, you know. Or I've had 50 rides and I haven't ridden the winner. He was a champion pony rider, pony race rider. And John Egan's father asked me one day, I was racing someplace, and he asked me would I take a young fella. And it was AIDAN MAGUIRE. So we took him. But we had him for a good while. It was very hard to get him to race the horses properly because he was used to the flapping and he had stayed a little bit too long at it. But I think he might have ridden his first winner, his first ride might have been his first winner. You know, a horse called Equinoctial in Skeeton in a point to point. And nearly that was his first ride. But after a year, you wouldn't have to give ADRIAN any instructions. He was a brilliant jockey. He was a brilliant jockey. He won on horses that should have got beat. And like, I mean, you'd say the difference between AIDAN MAGUIRE and other fellas was he won on horses that should have got beat. He just had such a will to win and power to win, you know. He was with me for about 4 or 5 years, I suppose. And then he went from me to England. He went to Toby Balling. And so the rest is history. I suppose he was one of the best jockeys. There was never a champion, really, like, you know. ADRIAN was. And he's still a nice fella today, you know. So even though he had to retire, he's just a very nice boy. He came to me from McHalford, sent Timmy Muffrey down to me. Timmy was a bit of a ball boy when he was around the Curragh, and it was to get him off the Curragh more than anything, like, you know. So McHalford asked me would I take him, but I'm sure he got sacked a good few times when you see how Timmy did. Like, it took him a long time to come right, but when he came right, he came really right, you know. And like when he came out of where he was, he got his agent to ring here to know could he come here for a month after he came out of where he was. But that tell you the strength of the man. He knew where to come. And we used to go swimming every night. I go swimming every evening. And we used to be moving in the sauna in the woodlands. And I said to him one night, I said, what are you going to do now, Timmy? I don't know, he said. He said, I might get you to ride on beef or salmon. And sure, they made one another again, like, you know. Shane rode my first winter in Cheltenham, Doran's pride. Yeah. He was a lovely fellow as well. You know, I mean, all the real nice fellas. And I had another very good lad as well, Johnny Kavanagh. Johnny Kavanagh was from Downey. Johnny was with me 10 years, I suppose. Johnny had only 3 jobs in his life, me, Nicky Henderson and John O'Neill. That's all he ever had. You know, so he might have been he started his career with Tony Redmond, and Tony Redmond sent him to me. So, but like he's a lovely fellow altogether, Johnny Kavanagh. Johnny Kavanagh and AIDAN MAGUIRE were here together. Very good rider. He rode his first winner for me, I'd say. Bellycombe Beauty, I'd say. Maybe, was it Bellycombe? I think it was Bellycombe Beauty, yeah. And I had a very good horse at the time. He called the horse, he said, Courtmaster. He called the horse Courtmaster after him. He used to look after Courtmaster here. Yeah. Yeah, and like, we had Adrian Heskin as well, like, and we had Gavin Sheehan was here. Yeah. Robbie Supper was here. David Casey was here. Good. I don't know who wasn't here. I met a fella the other day racing, actually. I was walking up in Clonmel and I was talking to a fella in here. We were talking about times and everything else, and he's a trainer now as well, Gary Ahern. And he says, yeah, I worked for you, he says, for a while. God, says, I can't ever remember you. Well, he did work for me, did Gary Ahern. He said, I spent the summer with her, whatever. Sure, he was a great rider as well. I mean, he was taught by Enda Bulger really, like, you know, and he was just as good a rider as Enda Bulger and a great horseman. He rode a lot of winners for me. He won on Moss Bank. He won on Moss Bank in where was it? Over the road in the Limerick Harriers. He won the maiden, a 5-year-old maiden, and he said, "You have another one." The minute he pulled up, "You have another one, Hourigan, you have another one." And he was a very good horse too, like, I mean, he was second in the Ryanair. And he got hurt, but sure, those things happen. No, sure, I wouldn't have the money going there now. I wouldn't give that kind of money for the horse. I mean, I wouldn't mind being on the receiving end, but I wouldn't like to be in the starting end. I wouldn't like to be in the starting end, you know. I never did that. So I'm not going to start doing it now because I'm not going to give away this place from a mistake. I made plenty of mistakes trying to pay for this place, but we have it now, and I'm not going to make the mistake and give 100,000 for a horse. It doesn't take too many 100,000 to go astray, you know. And there'd be a sign up outside the gate and for sale. No good. I don't really know. It might be an ego with them all, you know. I mean, they are making ridiculous money, like, you know. I mean, not the small man hasn't gone out of it. The small man is still hanging in, like, you know. But he isn't like he was before. I mean, as I said to you there a while ago, I mean, there was loads of farmers bred horses and took them to the sales. But I mean, they go to the sales now in a foal, like, and a foal makes 100,000. I mean, it's, who knows what the foal is going to turn out. He might be sound when he's a 3-year-old, you know. I mean, it's silly, but sure, look, somebody's making plenty of money out of it. He'd have to draw me into him. I'd have to like him. And if I got to like him, I'd buy him if I could. Well, I bought houses from all kinds of prices up. I bought houses from 500 up, 400, up to 15,000, I think was the most I ever got for a house. Of my own. I'd say he was no good. He won a race, but he was no good. No, he won a race, but he was no good. And when I sold him for less than he cost. I sold him for 1,000 less than he cost. I rang him in here Christmas Eve, and I'd say he was drunk. And he bought him, and he paid me for him. And I'd say he didn't know what he gave me for him. I'd say he didn't know what he gave me for him. But he bought him off me, and I took 1,000 less for him. Well, I would always like to give a young horse a run. And Tom Costello sold 5 Gold Cup winners. Doesn't too many sales sold 5 Gold Cup winners, but he sold 5 Gold Cup winners. And I'd say they never won a point the first day they ran, or maybe the second day. He would run a horse for 1.5 miles the first day. He'd run the second day for 2 miles and be sure he'd stay, and he might win the third day. You know, and I did the same, even though Doran's Pride won first time out. Before Salmon didn't, he fell first time out, but he had won. But, you know, I like to introduce the horses quietly, you know. I mean, they're running now, there are horses running now, 4-year-olds. And I think you would win a maiden hurl around Leopardstown easier. You know, there might be 20 runners in the race. There might be 8 or 9 of them not much good. There could be 5 of them fairly useful, doing their best. And there'd be 4 or 5 of them, or 6 or 7 of them again, maybe getting a run, trying to find out are they any good. And you might be lucky that the ones that are fancied might win. You could just maybe win. You know, but I would prefer to run a horse around Leopardstown now, or even the maiden hull anywhere, than go to a point with a 4-year-old. I can't see how how they'd hold going. They don't hold going at the moment. Like, I mean, Doran's Pride ran, I think, for 12 years on the bounce. Never missed a year. Before Salmon ran 10 years on the bounce. Never missed a year. You know, horses do miss a year and come back again. But I think when you drive the head off a car after you buy it, don't stay going forever either. You know, don't stay going. I worked for Lord Petersham. That was the last job I had in Patrick's Well. And a fellow called Mick Burke used to train there for him. He had his own private trainer. And but then Mick Burke took out a license and had his own license. But Mick Burke worked for Vincent O'Brien. And I'd say he worked for Vincent O'Brien when he was above in Touchdown, possibly. And I would say he taught me how to train. Whether he taught me how to train or I was getting a bit clever when I was there and I saw how he used to do things. And I still do things today the same as he did then. And he took 2 horses to Cheltenham on different occasions and won both times. Ken and Tom Kuma. Ken won there twice. Ken won the County Hurl and he won the Arkle. Frankie Carroll rode him. And Petersham rode him to win the County Hurl himself. And he won in Tom Kuma. But I would say Mick Burke, the way he did things, he was with a lot of good people, I would say. He died there last year, Mick did. But I would say I trained the same way as I've learned when I was with him. I mean, I had no education. My education was nil. But I wanted to be a jockey, and I wasn't a good one. You know, but then I had nothing else to do, so I started training. So you have to want, and you have to want, and you have to want to do it, and not be afraid of work. Like, I mean, my wife, when I rented Clonunion in 1980, 80 or 81, my wife used to get out of bed at 6:30 in the morning, drive to a dare, muck out horses, water horses, and be back in time to get the children to school. Now, you ask me what makes you to be a good trainer. Nothing less will do you. Nothing less. I mean, and I went over every morning, I did my work, and I came home for my dinner. My wife had my dinner ready, and if I was gone racing or if we were short of staff, she would have to go over. And I had my best friend is my bank manager, Jerry O'Connell, and he watered horses and he mucked out horses on the weekends. You know, I mean, there was nothing we didn't do to try and never to be like this. We never thought we'd be like this. Or we never thought we'd have got as far as here. But it just happened. But it happened through hard work and enjoyment the whole way. It was all enjoyment. You think it was work, but we didn't think it was work at the time. Do you know? The dream is still there. Somebody did an article on me there some years ago, a Racing Post. I don't know which one of them was. But he said to me, like you said there now, you're still doing what motivates you, you're still working as hard. But you don't work like, you don't work at this job at all. You just do it. It's a way of life, and it's what I want to do. And like, I have no bother in getting up in the morning and going down the yard. I never wake in the morning and say, oh jeez, do I have to do this? No way. I have never ever said it. from the time I went to my apprenticeship, and I used to get up at 7 o'clock in the morning and cycle a bike to work, hail, rain and snow. I never said, why am I doing this? Never, ever. If I could train a bad horse to win, it gives you great pleasure. You know, one that you think will never win. And there'd be fellas in the yard, young fellas you'd have working for you and everything else. That's, you know, I mean, they think, why you waste your time with that fella? You prove them right, like, you know. You prove them wrong, really, not right. Yeah, my son Michael said one day, I had a mare, I forget what, it was one of the lanterns anyhow, lantern something. And he taught me to get rid of him anyhow. But the next thing I won with him, I think I won 5 races with him after. But he said to someone, he was talking to somebody about, he said, isn't the father deadly? He says, you know, I mean, like, I'd say he said it unknown to himself, you know, but he said, isn't the father deadly? You know, but like, it was just a bad horse, and I found the secret to him, and he won 5. Lenton, something, I can't think what his name was. I can still talk about a horse that I got to train from somebody else one time. He was by status seeker. Can't think what his name was now. But he was trained by a local man. And he was placed, he was third of 3 or 4 one day. But I got him to train, and you know, Jerry Newman was working for me at the time. He was my first jockey. And we went to Galway races in September. And I had a treble the same day. And he won the first race, this horse. He was never again placed in his life. But he won that day. He won that day. I can't think what his name was. But he won that day, and Jerry Newman rode him. A fella said to me one time, when I trained the 25 winners my 3rd year, I was the big man. But I was at a race meeting one day, and this fella came up beside me, and he put his arm over my head, or on my shoulder. He said, hey, boy, he says, you know, says, this game of tame lions. This game with tame lions, he said. Was he so right? The next year, there were 25 winners in my 3rd year. The next year, I trained 3 winners in January, and I didn't train another winner until September. Put that in your pipe and smoke it. It's a hard pill to swallow when things like that happen. You think you're flying, and when you're climbing the ladder, there's loads of fellas to help you going up. But if you get near the top of that ladder by, they all want you to back down. And down you come. Down you come. And all you do is, when you do come down, keep your head down, get back up as far again as you can. Yeah, yeah. You know, but taming lions is the biggest line I ever heard. It would tame lions.